I spent my entire first life starving, chewing on ice cubes, crying over a slice of apple, while my best friend inhaled cheeseburgers and stayed a size 0. I died on a treadmill, my heart giving out, while trying to burn off weight that wasn't even mine. Harper had cursed me, using my body as her personal dumping ground for every calorie she consumed. But then I woke up. The curse was in my hands now, and I was starving. Death didn't feel like peace. It felt like burning muscle and a failing heart. The last thing I remember from my first life was the harsh fluorescent lighting of the 24-hour gym reflecting off the digital display of the treadmill. Distance, 8.4 miles. Calories burned, 920. I was a size 16, heavily panting, my vision narrowing into a dark, fuzzy tunnel. I hadn't eaten anything but black coffee and a handful of almonds in 3 days. And still, the scale that morning had mocked me with a 2-pound gain. Then came the sharp, tearing pain in my chest. The floor rushed up to meet me, the heavy thud of my skull hitting the rubber mat. Darkness. When my eyes snapped open, I wasn't staring at a gym ceiling. I was looking at glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to popcorn stucco. I bolted upright, gasping for air. My chest didn't hurt. My joints didn't ache with the heavy, persistent inflammation that had plagued my 20s. I looked down at my hands. They were smooth, uncalloused, and lacked the faint purple tinge of terrible circulation. I threw off the duvet and rushed to the mirror on the back of my closet door. 18. I was 18 again. My face was rounder, carrying the soft teenage weight I had spent the next decade trying to torture out of existence. I checked the date on my phone, resting on the nightstand. June 14th. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. June 14th was the day before high school graduation. It was also the day Harper came over with the bracelets. The doorbell rang downstairs. My mother's voice drifted up from the kitchen. "Chloe Harper's here." I gripped the edge of my dresser. In my past life, I thought Harper was just genetically blessed, a freak of nature who could eat an entire deep dish pizza and wash it down with a milkshake, only to show up to prom with a perfectly flat stomach. I, on the other hand, drank water and gained weight. It wasn't until the very end, a month before my heart attack, that I found her diary. She hadn't been blessed. She had been stealing, an old binding ritual she found on some obscure forum, a blood pact disguised as a friendship token. She linked our metabolisms, setting herself as the host and me as the vessel. Everything she consumed, my body processed the excess. She stayed perfectly thin. I became a balloon, absorbing her gluttony. Footsteps bounded up the stairs. My bedroom door swung open. "Hey, sleepyhead." Harper leaned against the doorframe. She was stunning. High cheekbones, a tiny waist, wrapped in a cropped vintage band tee, and loose denim shorts. She held a small velvet box in her hands. "I brought us graduation presents," she said, stepping into the room. She smelled like expensive vanilla perfume, and the glazed donut she was casually holding in her other hand. I stared at her. The sheer blinding rage that spiked in my chest was so intense it made my ears ring. This girl had murdered me. She had stolen my youth, my health, and my life sentence by sentence, bite by bite. "Wow," I managed to say, keeping my voice level. "You shouldn't have." "I wanted to," Harper insisted, sitting on the edge of my bed. She opened the velvet box. Inside lay 2 identical silver bracelets. They looked like twisted vines, thick and antique, with a small, flat metal clasp. I found them at that weird antique shop downtown. The guy said they're meant to bind souls, like ultimate best friend stuff. She pulled out a small, sterilized safety pin from her pocket. We have to do a blood sister thing to make it official. In the first life, I thought it was sweet, if a little weird. I had willingly offered my finger. She pricked, it smeared a drop of my blood on the clasp of my bracelet, then pricked her own finger and smeared it on hers. What I didn't know then was the mechanics of the runes etched on the underside of the clasps. One rune meant receive, the other meant give. She had given me the receiving rune, activated by my own blood. Okay, I said, sitting next to her. Let's do it. Harper smiled, a predatory gleam in her eyes that I finally recognized. She handed me the pin. You first. I took the pin. I picked up the bracelet, sitting on the left side of the box, the one I knew had the receive rune. But I didn't prick my finger. Instead, I fumbled. I let the pin slip, jabbing it sharply into the side of Harper's thumb. Ow, Jesus, Chloe, she yelped, pulling her hand back. A bright bead of crimson welled up on her skin. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm so clumsy, I gasped, grabbing her hand. Before she could pull away, I pressed her bleeding thumb directly against the underside of the left bracelet. Her blood smeared perfectly across the receive rune. The silver seemed to drink the red liquid, flashing dull and matte for a fraction of a second. Harper snatched her hand back, sucking on her thumb. What is wrong with you? I just slipped. Look, it's already on the bracelet. The pact is started. I picked up the pin, quickly pricked my own index finger, and pressed it against the right bracelet, the give rune. I snapped the left bracelet around Harper's wrist. It locked with a faint click. I put the right one on my own wrist. Harper looked annoyed, rubbing her thumb, but she glanced at the bracelet on my wrist, and her annoyance faded into a deeply hidden, smug satisfaction. She thought she still had the upper hand. She didn't realize the target had shifted. She was the vessel, now. I was the host. There, Harper said, her sweet facade returning. Friends forever. Forever, I echoed. My stomach gave a loud, hollow growl. I hadn't eaten a full meal in years. Are you hungry? Because I'm absolutely starving. Harper drove us to the diner on the edge of town. It was our usual hangout, though. Hangout usually meant I sat there drinking diet soda while she devoured the menu. We slid into a red vinyl booth. The smell of the place frying bacon, toasted buns, heavy syrup hit me like a physical wall. In my past life, this smell brought anxiety. Now, my mouth watered so intensely, my jaw ached. The waitress dropped off 2 laminated menus. Harper barely glanced at hers. I'll have the double bacon cheeseburger, Harper ordered brightly, with a large side of onion rings and a chocolate shake. She looked at me, her eyes dripping with fake sympathy. Just a side salad with vinaigrette on the side for you, right? Chloe, I know you're trying to slim down for the graduation gowns tomorrow. I looked at the menu. The calorie counts were printed next to the items. In the past, those little numbers were my wardens. Now they were high scores. Actually, I said, handing the menu back to the waitress, I'll have the lumberjack breakfast plate. 3 pancakes buttered, 4 eggs scrambled with cheddar, a side of hash browns heavily fried, a side of sausage, and a large strawberry milkshake. Oh, and can I get a side of biscuits and gravy? Harper stared at me, her mouth slightly open. The waitress didn't blink, just scribbled it down and walked away. Chloe, are you insane? Harper hissed, leaning across the table. That's like 3,000 calories. You're going to blow up like a balloon. You've been doing so well on your water fast. I decided to take a break, I said smoothly. I'm just so hungry. But your metabolism, Harper said, genuine panic edging into her voice. Not for my health, but for the optics. She liked having the fat friend to stand next to. It made her look better. But a binge this big. She probably thought I'd look like a whale by tomorrow. You know your body holds on to everything. I know, I said. I'm not worried about it anymore. When the food arrived, it covered the entire table. The pancakes were golden and soaked in melted butter. The eggs were a brilliant greasy yellow. I picked up my fork. My hand trembled slightly. The mental programming of a decade of starvation didn't vanish instantly. A voice in the back of my head screamed that I was poisoning myself, that I would wake up heavy, sluggish, and ruined. I silenced it. I cut a massive wedge of pancake, dragged it through the syrup, and shoved it into my mouth. The sugar hit my brain like lightning. It was euphoric. The soft texture, the rich butter, the sharp sweetness of the syrup. I closed my eyes and chewed. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. I chased it with a forkful of greasy, salty hash browns. I didn't stop. I ate with a methodical, ruthless rhythm. I tore into the sausage. I spooned thick gravy over the biscuits. I drank the thick, cold strawberry milkshake in massive gulps. Harper watched me in horrified fascination. She barely touched her own burger. She took a few bites of her onion rings, but her eyes never left my plate. You're making me nauseous, she muttered, pushing her plate away. Then don't look, I replied, wiping my mouth with a napkin. I felt incredibly full, a stretching pressure in my stomach that used to trigger instant panic and self-loathing. Now, it felt like ammunition loading into a chamber. That night, I slept heavily. No hunger pangs woke me up at 3 a.m. No phantom smells of bread haunted my dreams. I woke up the next morning, the day of graduation, and walked to the bathroom. I stripped down and stepped onto the glass scale. 165.4 pounds. Exactly what I weighed yesterday morning. Not a single ounce gained. All that sodium, all those carbohydrates, all that heavy fat, gone. Burned away into the ether, channeled right through the silver bracelet on my wrist. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Harper. I feel so gross this morning. I must have had an allergic reaction to those onion rings. My face is so puffy. I smiled at my reflection in the mirror. I looked rested, glowing even. I walked downstairs to the kitchen, opened the pantry, and grabbed a family-sized box of chocolate chip cookies. I poured myself a massive glass of whole milk. Drink lots of water. See you at graduation. I sat at the kitchen island and began dunking the cookies one by one until the box was empty. A week passed. The post-graduation summer stretched out before us. For me, it became a full-time job of caloric consumption. I treated eating like an extreme sport. I started waking up early, just to fit in an extra meal. Drive-through breakfast, burritos, dripping with cheese, mid-morning pastries, filled with cream-heavy pasta lunches, smothered in Alfredo sauce. I carried jars of peanut butter in my bag and ate it with a spoon while watching TV. I was clearing 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day. My body felt amazing. I had boundless energy. The persistent brain fog that had clouded my first life was completely gone. I went for runs not to burn calories, but because my legs felt light and powerful. Harper, however, was deteriorating. It started subtly. a slight tightness in her clothes. She had to unbutton her jeans when she sat down. Then her face lost its sharp, sculpted angles, softening into a rounded, puffy shape. By day 5, she had abandoned denim altogether and was living in oversized hoodies and leggings. We met at the local mall. She was waiting for me outside the food court, shifting uncomfortably on her feet. "Hey," I said, walking up to her. I was drinking a massive caramel frappuccino, loaded with extra whipped cream. Harper glared at the cup. "How are you drinking that you've been eating garbage all week?" I guess my metabolism finally woke up. I shrugged. "You look different." She defensively crossed her arms over her chest. The fabric of her hoodie pulled tight against her midsection. "I have a hormonal imbalance. My mom is taking me to the doctor next week. I've gained 8 pounds since graduation. 8 pounds, Chloe, in a week." Her voice cracked on the last syllable. Real distress. For an 18-year-old girl whose entire identity was built on being the beautiful, untouchable thin friend, 8 pounds was an apocalypse. "I'm sure it's just water retention," I said, delivering her favorite past life line to me. "Have you tried cutting out sodium?" "I haven't eaten anything solid in 2 days," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm doing a juice cleanse. But I woke up this morning and the scale went up another pound. It makes no sense. I feel so heavy. My thighs are rubbing together when I walk." I took a long, loud slurp of my frappuccino. "That sounds awful. You should definitely eat something, though. Starving yourself slows down your metabolism." She looked at me like I had slapped her. "I can't eat. If I eat, I'll just get bigger." "Well, I'm starving," I said brightly. "Let's go to the food court." I walked toward the glowing neon signs of the food court, leaving her to follow me. She trailed behind, her posture slumped, her usual confident strut replaced by a heavy, uncomfortable shuffle. I ordered a massive plate of orange chicken fried rice and 3 egg rolls. I sat down at a sticky table. Harper sat across from me, a bottle of smart water clutched tightly in her hands. Her skin looked pale and sallow. "I don't understand," Harper muttered, staring at my plate. "You're eating like a pig. You should be huge. You were always the one who struggled." "People change, Harper," I said, biting into an egg roll. The grease coated my lips. I chewed slowly, deliberately, maintaining eye contact. "Bodies change." She looked away, unable to watch me eat. "It's not fair. I've never had to worry about this. It's like my body isn't my own anymore." I swallowed the bite, feeling a cold, dark thrill pool in my stomach. "It isn't your own," I thought. "It's mine. It's my dumping ground." "It'll pass," I said out loud. "You just have to be patient." But it wasn't going to pass. I had plans for the afternoon. A deep dish pizza was calling my name, and I had a sudden craving for cheesecake. I watched Harper take a tiny, miserable sip of her water. The silver bracelet on her wrist glinted under the harsh mall, lighting visibly tighter against her skin than it had been a week ago. The metal was pressing into her flesh, leaving a faint red indentation. She was drowning in my indulgence, and I hadn't even reached the deep end yet. Mid-July arrived with a suffocating heat wave. The air hung thick and stagnant over the town, the kind of humidity that made simply existing feel like a chore. For my old body, this weather would have been a nightmare. I would have been hiding indoors, ashamed of the sweat pooling in my heavy creases, terrified of wearing shorts. Now I practically floated through the heat. I wore a tiny yellow sundress, relishing the feeling of the warm air against my bare, unchafing legs. It was the opening weekend of the county fair, In my first life, the fair was a minefield, a sensory overload of fried dough, roasting meats, and spun sugar that I was strictly forbidden from touching. Harper used to drag me there, making me carry her oversized stuffed animals, while she grazed on cotton candy and laughed at my miserable empty hands. This time, I was the one who insisted we go. I picked Harper up at noon. When she walked out of her front door, I genuinely had to double take. The transformation was rapid and brutal. The oversized hoodies had been replaced by a baggy, shapeless maternity dress she must have ordered online. Her face was entirely round her sharp jawline, buried under a soft, heavy double chin. Her ankles looked swollen, pushing over the edges of her flat sandals. She had easily put on 40 pounds in a month. She climbed into the passenger seat, breathing heavily from the short walk down her driveway. The car tilted slightly under her newly acquired weight. "Turn the AC up," she gasped, fanning her flushed face with her hand. "It's unbearable outside." "Sure thing," I said, blasting the cold air. "Ready for the fair? I've been craving a funnel cake since Tuesday." Harper groaned, clutching her stomach. "Don't talk about food. I feel sick just thinking about it. I'm on a strict water fast. I paid $200 for these imported detox drops. The scale has to move today. It just has to." I pulled out of her driveway, suppressing a smile. She was drinking snake oil while I was preparing to consume a small town's worth of deep-fried carbohydrates. The math was incredibly simple, yet she was looking everywhere but the truth. The fairgrounds were a sprawling grid of neon tents, mechanical rides, and food stalls. The smell hit us the moment we passed through the front gates: boiling peanut oil, powdered sugar, and caramelized onions. I took a deep breath, letting the scent fill my lungs. It smelled like victory. "Okay," I announced, pulling out a $50 bill. "First stop, the deep-fried butter stand." Harper looked at me like I was holding a live grenade. "Chloe, you can't be serious. That's just straight fat. It's disgusting." "It's an experience," I corrected, marching toward the bright yellow booth. I bought a skewer of deep-fried butter, a massive foil-wrapped turkey leg, and a 32-ounce cup of sweet tea. We sat on a wooden picnic bench near the Ferris wheel. The heat was relentless. Harper was sweating profusely, dabbing her forehead with a crumpled tissue. Her thighs, pressed tightly together beneath her dress, were visibly damp. I bit into the fried butter. The hot, salty liquid burst through the sweet, doughy shell, coating my tongue. It was rich, decadent, and utterly lethal. I ate all 4 balls on the skewer in under a minute. "Slow down," Harper snapped. Her eyes darted around, paranoid that people were watching us. Or rather, watching her. In her mind, she was still the beautiful center of attention. But now she thought the attention was critical. She wasn't wrong. "I can't," I mumbled around a mouthful of dark, smoky turkey meat. "I'm a growing girl. I spent the next 3 hours eating my way from one end of the fair to the other. I had a basket of curly fries, drowned in artificial cheese sauce. I ate 2 foot-long corn dogs, slathered in mustard. I bought a brick of curly ribbon fries and a paper boat of deep-fried Oreos dusted in thick powdered sugar. Every bite I swallowed, I watched Harper. She was deteriorating in real time. By hour 2, she had stopped complaining about the heat and started complaining about her joints. Her lower back was aching. Her feet were throbbing. These were my old symptoms, the phantom pains of carrying a heavy, unsupported frame on bones that weren't used to it. She kept shifting her weight, trying to find a comfortable way to stand. But there isn't one when your body is expanding faster than your muscles can adapt. I need to sit down, Harper whined, leaning heavily against a light pole. My chest hurts. I feel like I can't catch my breath. Just one more stop, I promised, pointing to the ice cream pavilion. I need a sundae. Chloe, please. She was begging now. Tears of genuine physical misery pricked the corners of her eyes. I can't walk anymore. My legs are chafing so badly, it feels like they're bleeding. I paused. I looked at her, truly, looked at her. Her face was red and streaked with sweat. The fabric of her dress clung to the rolls of her stomach. She looked miserable, broken, exactly how I felt the night I died on that treadmill. Okay, I said softly, my voice devoid of the sympathy I used to freely give her. Let's go home. You clearly can't handle this. I didn't slow my pace on the walk back to the car. I let her struggle to keep up her heavy footsteps, dragging against the gravel, the harsh, rasping sound of her breath filling the humid air. The rapid weight gain wasn't just destroying Harper's social life, it was becoming a mechanical hazard. By mid-August, she was pushing 200 pounds. Her body, genetically unequipped for this kind of mass, didn't distribute the fat evenly. It settled heavily in her midsection and her limbs. But the most pressing issue wasn't her waistline. It was her left wrist. I was sitting in my living room, polishing off an entire family-sized lasagna straight from the baking dish when my front door flew open. Harper stood in the entryway. She looked wild. Her hair was greasy and unwashed, tied in a messy knot. She was wearing men's sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt. But it was her face that caught my attention. She looked terrified. It won't come off, she hyperventilated, slamming the door behind her. She marched into the living room and shoved her left arm in my face. The silver bracelet we had put on 2 months ago was no longer a loose, decorative chain. It was embedded in her flesh. Her wrist had thickened with the rest of her body, but the cursed metal hadn't expanded. It was acting as a tourniquet. The skin around the silver was inflamed, angry, and purple. The clasp was completely buried under a bulge of swollen skin. I tried butter. She sobbed, her voice high and frantic. I tried dish soap. I tried ice. I even took a pair of wire cutters to it, Chloe. Look. She pointed a trembling finger at the bracelet. There was a tiny, barely visible scratch on the silver where she had tried to sever it. It won't break, she cried, pacing the carpet. My hand is going numb. I think it's cutting off my circulation. I need to go to the hospital, but they're going to use a saw. And what if they cut my hand off? I set my fork down. The cheese on the lasagna bubbled slightly. Sit down, Harper. You're being dramatic. I'm not. She collapsed onto the sofa. The springs groaned in protest. Something is wrong with me. Everything is wrong with me. I don't eat. I haven't had a solid meal in 3 weeks, Chloe. I drink green juice, and I chew on celery, and I wake up heavier. My doctor said my thyroid is fine. My blood work is perfectly normal. He told me I must be sleep eating. He handed me a brochure for a psychiatrist. She buried her face in her hands and began to weep. Deep, ugly chest-heaving sobs. And then there's you, she said, looking up at me through wet, swollen eyes. She gestured wildly at the empty pan of lasagna on my lap. You eat like a garbage disposal. You eat thousands of calories a day. You should be massive, but you've lost weight. You're wearing my old size 4 jeans. I glanced down at my legs. She was right. Without the burden of her gluttony, my natural metabolism had finally balanced out. The The slight teenage softness I had woken up with had melted away over the summer. I was lean strong and effortlessly thin. I was wearing her favorite vintage Levi's. They fit perfectly. Genetics are weird, I said flatly. It's not genetics, Harper screamed, leaping to her feet. It's this stupid bracelet. The guy at the antique shop, he said it bound us. What if it did? What if it messed up? What if it's transferring my metabolism to you? She had the mechanism backward, of course. Her narcissism wouldn't allow her to realize she was the one who initiated a parasitic bond. She just assumed the magic was broken and accidentally punishing her. Harper, listen to yourself, I said, using the exact, condescending, soothing tone she used to use on me when I complained about my weight. You're stressed. The scale is playing tricks on your mind. You're looking for a scapegoat because you can't control your eating habits. I'm not eating, she shrieked. Everyone says that when they're hiding food, I replied, twisting the knife. I picked up my fork and scraped the crispy edge of the cheese from the pan. You don't need to lie to me. If you're sneaking midnight snacks, just admit it. The first step to weight loss is accountability. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. I had thrown her own playbook right in her face. For years, whenever I swore I was dieting and the scale went up because of her curse, she would look at me with pity and tell me I was secretly binging. She told me I lacked discipline. She told me I needed to be honest with myself. Now she was trapped in that exact same psychological prison. She knew she wasn't eating. She knew she was starving. But her body was betraying her, and her best friend was calling her a liar. You don't believe me, she whispered, the fight draining completely out of her. I believe you need to calm down, I said. I stood up, walked over to her, and grabbed her left wrist. She flinched as I touched the swollen, angry skin around the bracelet. Let me try, I said. I hooked my fingers under the metal. It was incredibly tight. I could feel her pulse thrumming weakly against the silver. The clasp was right over her vein. I didn't try to open it. I knew the rules of the blood pact. The runes required blood from the host in the vessel to open just as it did to close. Until I decided to bleed for her again, that metal was a permanent fixture. I gave the bracelet a sharp, deliberate twist. Harper screamed, yanking her arm back. Stop! You're hurting me! It's stuck, I said, offering a helpless shrug. Maybe the swelling will go down if you drink less water. You're retaining a lot of fluid. She backed away from me, cradling her arm against her chest. The look in her eyes had shifted. It wasn't just panic anymore. It was a dawning, terrible realization of her own helplessness. I have to go, she muttered, turning toward the door. She didn't look back as she waddled out of my house, the heavy door clicking shut behind her. I walked back to the sofa. I picked up my fork. There was still a corner of lasagna left. I ate it cold, enjoying the silence of my living room. Summer was ending. In 2 weeks, we were supposed to pack our cars and drive 3 hours north to the state university. We had planned to be roommates. We had picked out matching duvet covers and bought a mini fridge to share. Harper canceled her housing contract on August 20th. She sent me a brief, misspelled text saying she was taking a gap year. She cited health issues and family stuff. I didn't reply. I knew exactly what the issue was. She couldn't bear the thought of showing up to a college campus looking the way she did. The social fallout in our hometown had already been devastating. The final event of the summer was a massive bonfire at the quarry, hosted by the captain of the football team. In my first life, Harper was the undisputed queen of this party. She wore a white bikini, drank vodka from a red cup, and had every boy in our graduating class orbiting her like satellites. I had sat on a cooler in the dark, wearing a baggy t-shirt over a one-piece swimsuit, trying to make myself invisible. This time, the roles were violently reversed. I arrived at the quarry wearing a sleek black two-piece. The night air was warm, the fire roaring against the dark stone walls. As I walked down the dirt path, heads turned. Boys who had never spoken a word to me in high school suddenly found excuses to offer me a drink or ask me about my college major. I accepted their cheap beers, laughed at their terrible jokes, and reveled in the shallow, intoxicating power of conventional attractiveness. I was eating a greasy slice of pizza I'd grabbed from a stack of boxes on the tailgate of a truck when I saw her. Harper hadn't wanted to come. I had texted her relentlessly, guilt-tripping, her telling her it was our last night together before I left. She finally caved. She stood at the edge of the firelight, hovering near the tree line. She was wearing a massive black windbreaker zipped all the way to her chin, despite the 80-degree weather. She wore dark, loose jeans that pooled around her sneakers. She looked terrified, clutching a plastic cup to her chest, like a shield. Nobody approached her. I watched a group of girls we used to eat lunch with walk right past her. One of them, a blonde named Sarah, leaned into her friend's ear and whispered something. They both cast sideways glances at Harper and giggled before walking away. I saw Harper's shoulders slump. I saw the way she tried to pull the windbreaker tighter around herself, trying to compress the mass she couldn't hide. It was a mirror reflecting my past life, playing out right in front of me. The isolation, the suffocating shame of taking up too much physical space in a world that demanded you be small. I finished my pizza, tossed the crust into the fire, and walked over to her. "You made it," I said brightly, holding a fresh beer. Harper didn't look at me. She stared into the fire. Her face looked exhausted. The skin under her eyes was bruised and dark. "I want to go home. You just got here," I chided. "Have a drink. Relax." "I can't relax," she said, her voice dropping to a trembling whisper. She finally turned to look at me. The hatred in her eyes was startling. It wasn't the petty annoyance she used to show when I inconvenienced her. It was a deep, venomous resentment. "Look at you. You're parading around eating trash, soaking up the attention. And look at me. You chose what to wear tonight, Harper," I said mildly. "Nobody forced you into a winter coat. You know exactly what I mean," she hissed, stepping closer. The smell of stale sweat and desperation clung to her. "It's you. I know it's you. I don't know how, but you did this to me. That day with the bracelets. You pricked my finger. You put it on me. You transferred your fat to me." She was so close to the truth, yet still fundamentally missing the point. She thought I cast a spell to give her my weight. She didn't realize I simply returned the weapon she had aimed at me. "Harper, you sound crazy," I said, letting a note of genuine concern slip into my voice. "Magic isn't real. Bracelets don't make you gain weight. Calories make you gain weight. You've had a rough summer, you've stress-eaten, and your metabolism slowed down. It happens to thousands of women. You just need to hit the gym." "Don't patronize me," she cried, her voice cracking loudly. A few heads turned in our direction. Harper shrank back instantly, terrified of the audience. "Please," she whispered, tears spilling over her puffy cheeks. "Please, Chloe, just take it off. If it's just a bracelet, take yours off. Take yours off, and I'll find a jeweler to cut mine off. Let's just take them off." She reached out her thick, trembling fingers, grasping at my wrist. She tried to pull my arm up, tried to find the clasp on my silver vine. I didn't resist. I let her pull my arm up between us. I let her look at the silver bracelet resting loosely against my slender wrist. Then, very calmly, I pulled my arm out of her grip. "No," I said. Harper froze. Her breath hitched. "What?" I said no. I repeated my voice, dropping its friendly facade, leaving behind cold, hard steel. "I like my bracelet. It's a symbol of our friendship. You said it yourself, Harper. Friends forever." "Chloe, please," she begged, abandoning all pride. She was openly weeping now, the tears catching in the folds of her face. "I'm begging you. I can't live like this. My body hurts. My heart is working so hard. I can't breathe when I sleep. I feel like I'm dying. I know I thought. I died of it." "You'll adjust," I said, taking a sip of my beer. I looked past her toward the fire, where people were laughing and dancing. "You just need to get used to your new normal. You're a big girl now. Learn to dress for your shape." I walked away from her, heading toward the warmth of the fire and the sound of music. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could hear her stifled, broken sobs perfectly over the bass of the stereo. She was trapped. She was drowning in the ocean she had tried to drown me in, and I wasn't going to throw her a life preserver. I was going to order another pizza. College was a buffet in every sense of the word. I arrived on campus in late August, moving into a spacious double dorm room that was supposed to be shared with Harper. Instead, I got a random roommate named Maya, a track and field recruit who subsisted on grilled chicken and protein shakes. She watched me with a mixture of awe and horror as I built my daily monuments of food. The dining hall was my sanctuary. I had an unlimited meal plan, and I abused it. Breakfast was a mountain of Belgian waffles, drowned in maple syrup, a plate of greasy sausage links, and 3 glasses of whole milk. Lunch was a rotating carousel of cheeseburgers, heavily dressed pasta salads, and thick slices of sheet cake. Dinner was whatever I wanted, usually followed by a midnight run to the local drive-thru for loaded nachos and milkshakes. I was easily clearing 6,000 calories a day, sometimes more. I joined a sorority. I went to frat parties and drank cheap, calorie-dense beer from plastic cups. I danced until 2 a.m. My body remained lean, my energy boundless. I was living the quintessential, vibrant college experience that had been stolen from me in my first life. Harper's life, meanwhile, had shrunk to the size of her childhood bedroom. She deleted her Instagram in October. Her Snapchat went dark shortly after. The only updates I got were through my mother, who occasionally ran into Harper's mother at the grocery store. Her mom says she's dealing with a severe metabolic disorder, my mother told me over the phone one Sunday in November. The poor thing. She's completely housebound. Her joints can't handle the weight. They've been to 3 specialists in the city, and nobody can figure out why she's gaining so fast when she barely eats. I was eating a pint of premium double fudge ice cream straight from the carton. "That's a shame," I said, digging my spoon into a thick chunk of brownie. "Tell her I say hi." Thanksgiving break brought me back to our hometown. The air was crisp and biting. I drove my beat-up sedan down the familiar suburban streets, pulling into my parents' driveway. I had barely unpacked my duffel bag when I decided to pay a visit. I didn't text first. I just walked the 3 blocks to Harper's house and rang the doorbell. Her mother, Mrs. Davis, opened the door. She looked aged. The deep lines around her mouth were set in a permanent frown of worry. When she saw me, her eyes widened. "Chloe," she breathed, looking me up and down. I was wearing a fitted turtleneck and a pair of high-waisted tailored trousers. I looked healthy, glowing, the exact opposite of what she was dealing with upstairs. "You look wonderful." "Thank you, Mrs. Davis." I smiled gently. "I wanted to come see Harper. Is she up for a visitor?" Mrs. Davis hesitated, wringing her hands together. "She doesn't really see anyone anymore, Chloe. She's very depressed. The doctors, She choked on her words, tears welling in her eyes. "They don't know what to do. Her heart is working so hard. She's on blood pressure medication. At 19. I just want to say hello. I promise I won't stay long." She stepped aside, gesturing toward the stairs. "She's in her room." I walked up the carpeted steps. The house felt heavy, suffocated by the quiet dread of chronic illness. I reached Harper's door and knocked twice. "Mom, I told you I don't want the broth." A voice rasped from inside. It sounded weak, muffled by exhaustion. I pushed the door open. The room was dark, the blackout curtains drawn tight against the afternoon sun. The air smelled of stale sweat, medicinal cream, and unwashed hair. Harper was in bed. Or rather, she took up the entire bed. She was propped up on a mound of pillows, breathing heavily through her mouth. A CPAP machine sat on her nightstand. She had to be pushing 250 pounds, maybe more. Her face was buried in deep folds of flesh, her eyes reduced to small, fearful slits. Her arms resting on top of the duvet were massive, and there, digging violently into the flesh of her left wrist, was the silver bracelet. The skin around it was weeping a raw, angry red. It was a literal tourniquet, the metal completely swallowed by her expanding body. Her hand was visibly purple, swollen tight, like a blown-up surgical glove. She turned her head slowly. When she registered, it was me. A profound animalistic terror washed over her face. "Get out," she whispered. "I brought you a souvenir from campus," I said, ignoring her. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a king-sized candy bar. I tossed it onto the bed. It landed near her thigh. Harper stared at the candy bar, then up at me. She started to cry. It was a pathetic, wheezing sound. "Why did you come here? To gloat, to watch me suffer?" "I came to check on my best friend," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "You look terrible, Harper." "I'm dying," she sobbed, her massive chest heaving. "My heart, it skips beats. The doctors say my cholesterol is off the charts. They want to put a balloon in my stomach, but they can't put me under anesthesia because of my breathing. And my hand," she weakly lifted her left arm. "They tried to cut the bracelet off last week. The saw blade broke. The metal wouldn't even scratch. Of course it wouldn't. It was bound by blood magic. Modern medicine couldn't touch it." "That sounds incredibly painful," I said, my voice completely flat. "Please," she begged the word, scraping out of her dry throat. "Please, Chloe, I don't know how you're doing this. I know you're doing it. I can feel it. Every time you eat, I feel my skin stretch. I feel the fat layering over my ribs. I'm sorry. Whatever I did to you, I'm sorry. Just let me go." I looked at her, really looked at her. I searched my soul for a drop of pity, for a sliver of the empathy that used to define me. I found nothing, just a cold, satisfying void. "I'm going to hit the buffet at the casino tonight," I told her casually. "I hear their prime rib is incredible. Oh, and I've really gotten into baking. I'm making 2 pecan pies for Thanksgiving tomorrow." Harper let out a raw, guttural scream. It was a sound of pure psychological break. She clawed at her own hair, thrashing her heavy head against the pillows. "You're a monster," she shrieked. "You're a sociopath." "Happy Thanksgiving, Harper," I said. I stepped out of the room and pulled the door shut, cutting off her screams. Winter hit hard. The semester ended, and I returned to campus for the spring term. I intensified my caloric intake. I started adding heavy cream to my coffee. I ate sticks of butter disguised in mashed potatoes. I was a machine of consumption, a black hole processing food purely for the kinetic energy of revenge. On a Tuesday in early March, my phone rang. It was 3 a.m. I sat up in the dark dorm room. Maya was snoring softly across the room. I picked up my phone from the nightstand. It was my mother. A cold spike of adrenaline hit my stomach. Calls at 3 a.m. were never good news. "Hello, Chloe." My mother's voice was trembling, thick with tears. "I'm so sorry to wake you, honey." "What's wrong? Is Dad okay?" "It's Harper," she said. The silence hung in the air for a terrible second. She had a massive heart attack an hour ago. Her mother found her unconscious in her bathroom. The paramedics had to take the door off the hinges to get her out. I closed my eyes. The parallel was so exact, it made my teeth ache. The heavy thud on the floor, the failing heart, the crushing weight of a body that couldn't sustain itself anymore. "Is she—" I couldn't finish the sentence. A strange, hollow panic fluttered in my chest. If she died, what happened to the bond? What happened to the bracelet? She's alive, but she's in the ICU. It doesn't look good, Chloe. The doctors told her parents to prepare for the worst. Her organs are failing. My mother blew her nose into the receiver. "I know you two drifted apart, but she was your best friend for so long. You should come home." "I'm leaving now," I said. I packed a small bag, threw on a pair of sweatpants, and drove through the night. The 3-hour drive felt like 3 minutes. My mind was racing. When I died on the treadmill, there was no warning, just the pain, the fall, and the dark. Harper was getting the slow fade. She was lying in a sterile room, surrounded by weeping relatives, suffocating under the very weight she had tried to force onto me. I arrived at the county hospital just as the sun was coming up, casting a weak gray light over the parking lot. I found my mother in the waiting room outside the ICU. She hugged me tightly. Harper's parents were inside the room. "They're only letting family in right now," my mother whispered. "But Mrs. Davis knows you're here. She said Harper woke up for a few minutes. She was asking for you." I sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair for 2 hours. Finally, the heavy wooden doors of the ICU swung open. Mrs. Davis walked out. She looked entirely broken, the kind of grief that hollows out your bones. She saw me and walked over. "Chloe, the nurse said you can go in for a few minutes. She's very weak." I nodded, standing up. I walked past her, pushing through the doors into the intensive care unit. Room 4. I stepped inside. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound in the room. The smell of antiseptic and sickness was overwhelming. Harper was practically unrecognizable. She was a massive, pale mountain under the thin hospital sheet. Tubes ran in and out of her nose, her arms, her chest. Her face was a balloon of fluid retention, her lips bruised and blue. The silver bracelet on her left wrist was buried so deep it looked like a surgical scar. The hand beyond it, a dark mottled purple from total circulation loss. Her eyes fluttered open. They were bloodshot, the whites yellowing. She tracked me slowly as I walked to the edge of the bed. She didn't look angry anymore. She didn't look terrified. She just looked defeated. She opened her mouth. A dry, rasping sound came out. I leaned closer. You won, she breathed, the words barely audible over the hum of the machines. I stared down at her. There was no game, Harper. Just a mirror. She closed her eyes, a single tear leaking from the corner and tracking through the deep crease of her cheek. Why, we were friends. Were we? I asked, my voice calm, dropping the act entirely. Do you remember the treadmill, Harper? Her brow furrowed slightly in confusion. What? No, you wouldn't, I said, pulling up a plastic chair and sitting beside her bed. I leaned in close, ensuring the nurses outside the glass wall couldn't hear me. In my first life, I didn't knock the pin out of your hand. I let you prick my finger. I bled on the receive rune. You bled on the give rune. Harper's eyes shot open. She stared at me, her breathing hitching the monitor, picking up a slightly faster, erratic rhythm. I spent my entire 20s starving. I continued, my voice a quiet, venomous hiss. I ate ice chips. I drank black coffee. I ran 10 miles a day. And I gained weight. I bloated. My joints ached. My heart struggled. While you ate whatever you wanted. You drank, you binged, you lived. And you stayed a size 0. She tried to shake her head to deny it, but she was too weak. I found your diary, Harper. The month before I died. I found out exactly what you did to me. You cursed me. You used my body as a trash can for your gluttony. You knew exactly what you were doing. And when I tried to burn off the weight you forced onto me, my heart gave out. I died on a treadmill, in a 24-hour gym, entirely alone, hating myself. The heart monitor began to beep faster. Beep, beep, beep. You murdered me, I stated softly. Slowly, day by day, bite by bite. So when I woke up back in my 18-year-old body, on the day you brought those bracelets over, I simply reversed the polarity. I put the receiving rune on you. Harper's mouth opened in a silent scream of horror. The realization hit her breaking through the fog of the painkillers. She wasn't the victim of a broken spell. She was the victim of her own exact design, wielded by the person she had planned to kill. You, she gasped. You remember. I remember every single calorie, I promised her. Every hunger pang. Every time you looked at me with fake pity and told me I just needed to try harder. Her hand, the good one, twitched toward me. Please, she mouthed. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know, I said. You're sorry because you got caught in your own trap. Take it off. She was straining now, her eyes pleading desperate. I'll die. You might. I agreed. That's usually how this level of strain on the human heart ends. Chloe, please. I looked at her mangled left wrist. If she survived the heart attack, she would likely lose the hand to necrosis. She would be permanently disabled, permanently scarred by the massive, rapid expansion of her skin. The damage was done. The lesson was deeply, physically carved into her flesh. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a small, sterilized safety pin. I had carried one every day since June. Harper's eyes locked onto the silver pin. Hope, painful and bright, flared in her yellowing eyes. I'm breaking the bond, I told her. Not for you, for me, because I'm tired of eating garbage. I want a salad. I want to feel the sun without knowing I'm tethering you to the earth. I didn't wait for her to thank me. I reached out and took her heavy, ruined left hand. She winced in pain as I shifted her wrist. I dragged the tip of the safety pin deeply across the pad of my own thumb. A bright, dark drop of my blood welled up. I pressed my bleeding thumb directly against the swollen, buried clasp of the silver bracelet embedded in her wrist. The silver flashed once, a bright, violent white light that only I seemed to notice. A sharp, metallic click echoed in the quiet room. The clasp released. The metal, under immense pressure from her swollen flesh, snapped open and flew off her wrist, clattering onto the linoleum floor. Harper let out a long, shuddering gasp. The relief was immediate. The tourniquet was gone. Blood rushed back into her purple hand, causing her to cry out in agonizing pins and needles pain. I stood up. I wiped my thumb on a hospital tissue. I looked down at the silver vine lying uselessly on the floor. "It's over," I said. She looked up at me, weeping openly, her chest heaving as she sucked in oxygen. Will I go back?" I looked at her massive frame. The stretched skin, the compromised organs, the ruined vascular system. Breaking the bond stopped the transfer. It didn't reverse time. The fat was hers now. The damage was hers to burn off pound by excruciating pound. "No," I said softly. "You have to do the work now. You have to diet. You have to exercise. You have to be honest with yourself. Welcome to my world, Harper." I turned and walked out of the ICU. The sliding glass doors of the hospital lobby parted, and the crisp morning air hit my face. I stopped on the concrete sidewalk and took a deep breath. For the first time since my rebirth, the air didn't smell like grease sugar or impending anxiety. It just smelled like car exhaust and damp earth. I got into my sedan and drove away. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I pulled into the parking lot of the exact same diner Harper and I had visited the morning after high school graduation. The red neon sign buzzed overhead, a persistent hum in the quiet dawn. I sat in a cracked vinyl booth near the back window. The familiar scent of frying bacon, toasted buns, and heavy maple syrup wafted from the kitchen. In my first life, that smell was a siren song that inevitably ended in crushing self-loathing. For the last 10 months, it had been a battle horn, a call to arm myself with calories. Now it was just background noise. A tired waitress slapped a laminated menu onto the sticky table. "Coffee, hon?" she asked, pulling a pen from her apron. "Yes, please," I said. I slid the menu right back across the table toward her. "And I'll just have a bowl of oatmeal with fresh berries and a glass of water." She nodded and walked away. I pressed my palm flat against my stomach. The frantic clawing hunger that had dictated my every waking moment since June was gone. The parasite was dead. My body felt entirely my own again, quiet, balanced. When the oatmeal arrived, I ate it slowly. The oats were warm and earthy. The berries were sharp and bright. It tasted clean. It tasted like a future. I didn't stay in town to watch the fallout. I packed my bags that afternoon and drove back to campus. Harper survived. The heart attack didn't kill her, but it fundamentally shattered the reality she had always known. My mother filled me in on the details during our weekly Sunday phone calls, her voice hushed as if gossiping about a ghost. Harper spent 2 months in an inpatient cardiac rehabilitation facility. She didn't lose her left hand, but the severe, prolonged compression caused permanent nerve damage. She wears a supportive brace now and walks with a heavy, uncoordinated limp. Breaking the bond stopped the transfer of calories, but it didn't reverse time. The magic was a conduit, not an eraser. The 250 pounds of mass she had accumulated didn't magically vanish into thin air. It belonged to her. It was real physical tissue, and she was trapped inside it. To lose it, she would have to do exactly what she had spent her entire youth mocking me for doing. She would have to count every single calorie. She would have to sweat, ache, and starve, fighting an agonizing uphill battle against a metabolism and a body that were now entirely ruined. I changed my major to clinical nutrition. I learned the mechanics of the human body, the exact science of what we consume and how we burn it. I made new friends. I went on dates. I learned how to look in a mirror without mentally calculating my worth based on the sharpness of my jawline. I haven't spoken to Harper since that morning in the ICU. Sometimes, late at night, I think about her heavy, labored breathing, echoing in her dark bedroom. I think about the mountain of loose skin she will eventually have to carry if she ever manages to lose the weight, a permanent physical receipt of what she tried to do to me. I don't feel a shred of guilt. I don't feel a grand sense of triumph either. Revenge, once it's fully consumed, is incredibly hollow. I just feel free. I stopped dieting. I stopped overeating. I simply started living. Because the hardest truth I learned across 2 lifetimes is this: the only weight that truly destroys you is the weight you carry for someone else. That is the true story of how I took my life back. Sometimes karma isn't a mystical force. Sometimes it's just handing a loaded weapon back to the person who pointed it at you. If my journey resonated with you, or if you've ever felt trapped in a body that wasn't being treated right, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more deeply personal, unfiltered stories. Drop a comment below. Would you have broken the curse or let her keep eating? See you next time.